Huntertown, Indiana. It's Soarin Hawk on the air. So, how are you folks today? Getting ready for wintertime? Well, we out here at Soarin Hawk are starting to prepare for wintertime. Louie and Ross and I have been out here. We've been putting up some what we call FRP, which is screening that we're putting over the ends of the pens so that the bird cut down the wind going through the pens. So we're getting preparation for wintertime. Which brings up a topic that, since we're getting ready, at home, I noticed that my wife has now put away my short shorts and my tank tops, and flip-flops, and so we're now getting into getting some jackets out. And I think I saw a parka the other day. She's expecting some really cold weather. But, so this is what we humans do, depending on the season and depending on the weather. We go out there, we look outside, we put on a rain jacket, a parka if we need it, get an umbrella out, or, like some of our volunteers around here, slip into a tank top and Daisy Dukes, and they go out here watching birds. So we change our weather, our appearance, our apparel, according to the weather. But what do birds do? So what do birds do with the weather? Okay, so today's topic is birds and the weather. So sometimes birds, as you can see here, use the weather to aid themselves. All right, so sometimes they use thermals. That's hot air rising off farm fields or roadways and things like that, hot surfaces, and that makes hot air go up. As the hot air goes up, then the birds rise with it. So they get into these thermals, and I think I have a nice pretty picture of thermals. Okay, this low budget stuff, that's for the birds. No, it's not. So there's a bunch of broad-winged hawks all heading down to Mexico for the wintertime. And here they've climbed up into a thermal, and we call this a kettle of hawks. So they're all up there moving around, getting altitude, and when they get up high enough, then they peel off and they head on their way. So they use thermals, okay, to help transport themselves around. Vultures use thermals. You see the vultures out here circling and looking for food, but they also use those thermals and they rise up into the air so they can get a good viewpoint and watch things. So they use thermals. Some of the birds use wind, okay? So one of my little guys here, who you got there? You got Tawny?
Yep.
Okay, why don't you bring Tawny up here? So Tawny's a kestrel, and Tawny, now this is no way to behave on TV, okay? So Tawny is a kestrel. What is it with you? Be behaved, good girl. Okay, so Tawny's a kestrel, and kestrels use the wind quite a bit because they like to go up in the air and they like to hover. So you get, like this guy here. You recognize this one? Okay. So here's a kestrel up there hovering, looking down from ice. So he depends on the wind to get him up there to transport him. And so they expend as little energy as possible. So he's not flying back and forth. He's just hovering up there, waiting for the wind underneath him to support him and to get him to where he's going. Now, other birds like Skylar here, well, bring Skylar over here. So we have birds like Skylar. Skylar's also another bird that depends on the wind. And typically, they go across fields, usually in the morning breeze or the evening breeze. And so they fly across with their wings way out in a nice dihedral so that they can fly low and slow. And they're standing out there. Here, you want to look? Okay. Wow, what do you think? Anybody you know? I think I just got the bird. So anyway, so they depend upon the wind. There might be a minute amount of wind, like they get it in the morning or in the evening. And morning and evening flights make him what we call a crepuscular bird. Comes out at dawn and dusk. So a lot of the birds, or some of the birds, do depend upon the wind for transporting them today. So they're weather related, if you will. Also, some of the birds depend upon precipitation in various forms. Sometimes if you watch the birds out there, as soon as this first little pitter patters of rain come out, all of a sudden the robins are excited because what's going to happen? The pitter patter of rain on the ground drives the earthworms up. The earthworms come to the surface, and they're the birds out there the robins out there picking off the earthworms. Also, if it snows, what better way to find your prey than having the prey backlighted by the snow? So here you got a dark a weasel or a chipmunk or a squirrel highlighted by the white snow, and this makes it easier for the hawks. So a lot of times the birds depend upon the weather to help them out with what they're doing. And also, they use weather forecasting. Now we don't, they don't tune into channel 15, you know, to get the guy there giving the false weather reports. No, instead they depend upon their senses. So they go out there, they start seeing that it's clouding up, the air pressure has dropped, the barometric pressure has dropped, and they know that there's bad weather coming. So they use that forecast to know that there's bad weather coming, or if the wind starts blowing in from a certain direction, they know if they get a nice southwest wind here, you're going to have either usually it blows in moisture, and usually that indicates that there's a storm coming. So they use forecasts, you know, to predict what they're going to do the next day or what they have to do that night. In other words, go to a good place to shelter so that they can go through the weather over the evening or be prepared for the next day to go out there. So there's two kinds of weather that they have to prepare for. They have to prepare for warm weather, so they have to know how to stay cool. So how do you stay cool? Well, first off, in the springtime, a lot of the birds mold out their old winter feathers, okay? They get rid of those. You know, they've been worn out, you know, over the winter time. They're kind of busted up a little bit. So they start losing their winter plumage and replacing it with spring plumage. Sometimes that plumage is such that it's designed for courtship, for attracting mates and that kind of thing. But also when they go into summer plumage, they're getting rid of some of the down and stuff that's been insulating them all winter. Are you paying attention, bird? Okay. So anyways, they're losing some of the down. They get rid of some of that. Then their feathers are cleaner, and they're all ready to go. So they get into spring plumage, so they don't, so that they're designed more for the warmth. Okay. What else do the birds do? Well, what makes us get overheated? When we do a lot of work, a lot of exertion. Okay, running around, stuff like that. So they try to avoid exertion as much as possible. So a lot of times what they do is they go out there, they do their, you know, get up in the morning, stretch, you know, call out to their mates, you know, a couple whistles and things like that, and then they go and they get some food, all right? They get the food, and as soon as they get enough food on board, they go find a place to sit, okay? They just sit, they don't fly around, they're not chasing, they're not doing anything like that, unless it's courtship, of course, and then, you know, that's a normal way things go. So maybe the males are chasing the females or vice versa. And so you get some exertion like that. But basically what they do is, as soon as they have enough food, they go inert. Okay, they go find a place to rest, digest their food, and that kind of thing. So that's why you see a lot of activity. First thing in the morning, last thing at night, and then during the rest of the day, it gets kind of quiet, you know. Okay, so one of the other techniques.
Siesta.
Siesta, yeah. The other thing is stay out of the sun, okay? So they stay into the trees or under the bushes or in the grasses, things like that. So if you stay out of the sun, you're not going to get heated up, and so you can avoid the warmth, so you can keep yourself cool. Feather maintenance is very important, okay? Because if your feathers are in good shape, then you will be able to fly better, okay? You're going to be either keep dry or you know, to prevent getting wet or that kind of thing. Or the other thing is you can also for cooling, because every so often you want to fluff your feathers up, let all that heat escape and that kind of thing. So feather maintenance is very important. And how do birds do that? Well, take baths. That's one of the things that gets rid of some of the grime and stuff like that. They preen a lot, okay? And during preening they have a little bit of oil that they put on their feathers from their eupugial gland. And that oil is really for feather maintenance. It has nothing to do with waterproofing, because the waterproofing of the bird actually comes from the way that the feathers are designed. With the interlocking barbs on the feathers, they actually repel the water. So it's like, you know, if you ever go out and buy outdoor clothing, or a tent or something like that, they have a thing called dieners, okay, and that's how tight the threads are. And the higher the diener count, the higher, the more water repellent the item is, you know. So anyway, so they have a lot of dieners, okay. so anyways, feather maintenance is very important. Panting, and I don't know, have you started panting yet? No. Nope, not yet. Okay, so they pant because birds don't have sweat glands. Okay, so to get rid of heat, just like a dog or a cat, they actually have to open their mouth and they pant, bringing cool air in, expelling the hot air. So that's another way that they control their temperature. One of the things I really found out that, you know, we always think about, you know, black things absorbing heat and being very hot, but actually having dark feathers actually is good for cooling yourself off, because what happens is as dark feathers heat up, they actually form a small thermal barrier, okay, that prevents more heat from going down into the body of the bird. Whereas light feathers, if you had light feathers on, what will happen is that the sunlight will go right through, right to the body and heat the body up. So having dark feathers like a crow or a grackle or something like that is actually beneficial to them in the sunlight. And then the other thing further is that the nests protect the young, so they help to keep the young cool off and that kind of thing, so they get less exposure to the sun. Okay, so what about keeping warm? How do you get warm? And so we have, first thing is you molt into winter plumage. So when you molt into winter plumage, what do? You remove damaged or worn feathers. So you get rid of those old ones because, you know, if you have damaged or worn feathers, your flight efficiency isn't quite as good, you know, that kind of thing. So you want your feathers in good shape like that. But you also, when you get your winter molt, you actually start putting on more down. So you get more down feathers, and down is apparently one of the most efficient insulators that mankind has ever found. They haven't found anything artificial that competes with down, especially something like eider down or goose down, you know, so. Okay, and so you get more feathers, you get more down. Also, now that winter's come on, you get that new coat on. A lot of birds actually change color, if you will. So those old goldfinches all turn green, and the males look like the females, and nobody can tell each other apart. And so there's less reason to have interactions, you know, any kind of fights or anything like that, or trying to drive off one another. So now you have a more homogeneous group of birds or flock of birds, and so, you know, so that's one of the things that, so now you're not wasting your energy by being aggressive. Instead, you're spending all your energy in keeping warm or getting food. Also, you're more camouflaged, because in the wintertime, what happens, all the leaves are going off the trees and things like that, and so now you have to find better places to hide, and by being a darkish color or having your colors change, you actually can hide better, and again, you're not using up a lot of your energy to go out and hide, but you're actually using your energy for staying warm and taking care of you. Hello? You watching still? Yep, still. Okay. He's really reading that.
Yeah.
Okay.
See?
Okay. So, and again, the darker colors gives you a little bit more heat absorption because you don't have a whole bunch of sun, and you know. But so how else do you eat? You keep warm? You eat more. That's just exactly what we do. You know, some of us pig out there at Thanksgiving. You know, getting ready for winter. You know. Of course, for some people, Thanksgiving's every day. So, so we eat more, we put on more fat, more body fat, and that kind of thing. So we have more reserves, and so more insulation is there. But then on a daily basis, how do we stay warm? So there's lots of things there. So daily, we reduce the activity. Again, try to minimize the amount of activity that you do. So you go to the, you know, feed first thing in the morning, last thing at night. During the rest of the day, you kind of keep your energy down, okay? And so you fluff up. Anybody want to fluff for me? Want to fluff? No, no fluffing.
No fluffing.
Okay. So the birds fluff up, okay? They rouse, they get those feathers stuck out. They have little erectile muscles underneath the skin, so that pulls those feathers up, and that down entraps a bunch of air. and then that air helps to insulate the bird so you can stay warmer. So, okay, you tuck in your extremities. You know, you pull your foot up, hide it under your feathers, or sometimes you just squat down, put your feet underneath you, and you know, I would demonstrate, but I won't know if anybody can get me back up. So anyways, so you squat down, cover up your feet, and that keeps them warm. You tuck your head underneath your armpit or wing pit, okay? And I've tried that. It doesn't work out. You know, but they can do that, so they snuggle that in. So hide the extremities, okay? So there's less loss of heat, that kind of thing. Sunbathing, you know, some of the birds sunbathe. Get a nice warm day like this. I often see my blue jays will come out there on one of my big flat feeders, and they'll just lay there and orient themselves toward the sun, and then away from the sun, and then they'll tilt their feathers up. They'll rouse, and so all that sunlight is coming in and striking the body. Okay, so they're getting heat that way, so they're warming up. And sometimes I look at them, their little eyes are closed or rolled up in their skull. They're kind of like, oh, this is good. So they're out there rousing, and quite often birds will do this as a group. And so a couple guys will stand on guard, the rest of them will do their sunbathing thing, and then they'll switch. And let's see, some of the birds use cavities. So birds like bluebirds, okay, will use a cavity in the wintertime. So here's several families of bluebirds all roosting together inside a tree cavity. So birds will do that. So if you have bird boxes out there, you know, you can leave your bird boxes up, clean them out, okay? And then make them available for the birds to use over the winter. I have a screech owl that uses a bird box in front of our house all winter long, you know. Sits there in his little cavity, so he has a place to hunt from. And, you know, unfortunately, we don't have anything to feed him, but, you know, but on the other hand, the mice and the other rodents that come to the feeders at night, you know, to get the seed that's spilled, the screech owl comes out and takes care of. So that's one of the things that they use cavities. And the other thing is, birds are becoming very adaptable. So they're using what we call human microclimates. Okay, so you know, you put up a house. You know, not all houses are very well insulated. So you got places like around your windowsills and place where hot air comes out, leaks out, and you'll see sparrows and other things, finches and things, sitting there on your windowsill, keeping warm, you know. Or you go to the big cities where you have the grates that ventilate the subways. You get all that warm air coming up, and you see the grate covered with birds. You know? They're all sitting there, staying nice and snugly and warm. In fact, you know, go up to Chicago, and there's flocks of parrots now living in Chicago because they have all those nice microclimates to keep them nice and warm so they can survive the winters up there.
Wow.
So, you know, so it's pretty neat. So birds become very adaptive on keeping them warm, you know. So if I'm going too fast, you can watch this again. I hope. Okay. So anyway, so what do you do when the climate really changes, like on a immediate basis? Okay. Hey, you're not paying attention there, Tony. Okay. So storm survival. How do birds survive storms? You know, we go out there and we look and, you know, people aren't surviving, you know, people running around, you know, screaming, heading for tornado shelters and things like that, you know. So how do birds survive storms? Well, first off, they can detect storms, okay? And if you watch your birds and you watch your animals, a lot of the animals know that there's a bad storm coming. Usually, or at least what they believe, is that they detect air pressure changes. So as a storm is coming through, usually bad storms are coincident with low pressure systems. So typical air pressure is about 30 inches of mercury. And so when it starts going down to 29, 28, I think we had a storm here one time went below 28. And that was a bad storm. That was 3 feet of snow overnight.
Gee whiz.
That was really bad. But anyway, so they can detect that change in pressure. Air pressure, so they react accordingly. They start getting themselves ready. So they're out there finding hiding places to go, feeding up real fast, you know, that kind of thing. Sometimes it doesn't work. We had bobwhite quail in our backyard. They found a place that was low, out of the wind and everything. Unfortunately, 3 feet of snow dumped on top of them, and we lost all of them. So, you know, so that happens. They also know those wind directions, you know. So when the wind's coming out of the south and it's fall, I'm not migrating, okay? I'm waiting here a couple days. But when the wind is coming out of the north, you know, nice little brisk wind, you know, up in the air I go and go south, you know. So they watch the weather, and so that's why sometimes, like, my hummingbirds didn't leave here until late. And so I don't know whether they detected the air pressure changes produced by all the hurricanes down to the south, or whether they just saw that there was wind coming in from the southwest, and there's no sense beating yourself on that. But when that wind started coming down from the north, we started seeing really high migrations. So the hawks and stuff, we had some high days, the 15th and 16th and 17th of this month, when all that cold air was coming down from the north, pushing all those hawks out and getting them to head south. One of the things that they think that birds can do is they can detect infrasonic waves. So infrasonics, that would be low noise, typically made by either by the wind or by thunder. So they can detect those, and they can feel that through their body, and they react accordingly. So what do they do to negate the problem of the storm? Well, sometimes they move away. So they move out of the path of the storm, which is pretty smart. In fact, they tracked one warbler. I guess they had a tracking device on him. He actually flew 930 miles in a day and a half. Wow. Well, he had the wind behind him, but there was a storm coming, and so he just got the heck out of the way. You know, so they can move away, and a lot of times things like seabirds or ducks and things like that, they'll find a cove or something like, or an inlet into the a river inlet or something like that, and they'll move up in the inlet, you know, and so they get out of the way in storms coming in from the sea or the ocean. So there's a number of things that birds can do to adapt, okay? They stock up on food. If they know there's a bad storm coming, they eat greedily, okay? So they'll go out there and they'll just start consuming food left and right, you know, so because they know that there's going to be a time that they're not going to be able to get anything. They also hide. So sometimes, you know, they'll hide in bushes, cavities if they can, you know, and bird houses. You know, I've had birds hiding underneath my car, you know, so it's, you know, so they know to hide to get out of the weather, and they find an appropriate place. And then finally, sometimes they'll find a place to hide and they'll go into torpor. In other words, if, like for insect-eating birds, insectivorous birds, like the swifts and the tree swallows and barn swallows and stuff like that, what they'll do is they'll find a place to hide, and then they'll reduce their body temperature down to below 50, heart rate down, and they'll go to sleep for a day or two until the storm passes, and then come back out and find bugs and things like that. So there's some tricks that they can do to negate the effects of storms. So it's always interesting, you know, you always wonder, like, what happened to all the birds when that big storm came through? Well, the birds reacted, and they got out of the way. Unlike some of us humans, where we all stand out there on a porch with our cell phones, take a picture of the tornado coming at them. So, yeah.
True.
Yeah. Remember bird brains? Yeah. So, you know, so what can we help the birds with storms? Yeah, we can do a little bit. Oh.
She's saying, yeah.
Yeah. You are noisy today.
We're kept doing
Yeah.
Okay, so how can we help the birds? Well, the big thing is maintaining the habitat. I know a lot of people get out there first thing in the fall, you know, oh, gotta get rid of the leaves. Oh, gotta get rid of the branches. Oh, gotta get rid of this. Gotta clean it all up. And what they do is, Okay, quiet. Okay. So anyways, so maintain the habitat. You know, leave those branches up. Leave those leaves on the ground. You know, the leaves will decay and they'll make mulch for the ground and stuff like that, and cover. So all those leaves down there give a place for the white-throated and white-crowned sparrows and the juncos to feed in. You know, branches. You know, so the birds have a place to perch and to hide, that kind of thing. Don't forget, feed your birds. You know, this is not an advertisement for Wild Birds Unlimited, but you know, but it doesn't hurt to put some food out for the birds. You know, and you know, just to give them a little bit. You know, you don't have to give them a whole lot, but just a little bit to knock off some of the problems that they might be having on finding something. You know, and before winter comes on, clean out the bird boxes, but leave the bird boxes up. I know a lot of people take their bird boxes in, and then, you know, for the winter, no, leave them out. You'd be surprised, you know, like I showed you the bluebirds will use the bluebird boxes. Chickadees and titmice and woodpeckers. I have downy woodpeckers that use bluebird boxes in the wintertime. So, you know, so leave the bird boxes out there and give the birds a chance. So, anyways, so that's a short thing on birds and weather. If you'd like to know more, well, you'll have to tune on later on for something else. Okay, so that's me for today. Don't forget, calendars are on sale, going fast. Let's see, we have one more week. One more week for you
Right.
to order your calendars.
Hurry up
okay?
and get your orders in.
Get your orders in. Hello. Hi. There you are. Yeah, there you are. Hello. So anyways, yeah, get your orders in.
I have to say, Skylar's in the calendar.
Yeah,
No.
Skylar's there. And so, you know, these are cheap at twice the price, okay? So, you know, get them. You'll like the pictures. And like I said, last day, October 15th. And, you know, so help us out. And this will help us out. But by us, I mean the birds and us, okay? So I'm going to say goodbye for today. And we'll see what kind of thrilling adventure we have next week. You know, we'll have a new topic. You know, if somebody has a topic that they want to know about, you know, give a jingle. You know, I had the lady ask about why some birds like chili peppers and some don't. You know, so or some animals don't. You know, so you never know what kind of question is going to come up and inspire another talk. So I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay, thanks
Goodbye.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Oh, what did you do on the
Bye-bye.
floor there? Okay.